Okay, we're live in about 6 minutes. Live in about 6 minutes.
Good evening and welcome to the March 10, 2022 Morganton Planning and Zoning Commission meeting. We're glad to have you here tonight to help us in our process. Just want to assure you that there are 3 new items on our agenda tonight for new business, and if you would like to address those items, you'll be given an ample opportunity when we get to that point in our agenda. But before we're there, we need to go back and cover some old business. The first is a review and approval of our February 10 meeting minutes. Do I hear any additions, deletions, corrections? Okay, hearing none, I move that those are approved. Our next item is a review of the city council actions that have taken place since our last meeting. Philip, do you want to cover those for us, please?
Yes, sir. Mr. Chairman, members of the commission, there were 2 items that went before City Council, in fact, this past Monday evening, and that was the rezoning at 436 Lost Corner Road, and that was a request to rezone that parcel from RLCU to LID, and that was adopted by City Council on Monday night. And the second thing was to amend section 4.4.3.2 of our zoning ordinance that deals with buffers. That deals specifically with type 2 buffers, where you have any non-residential type development adjacent to any other development. It previously read that type 2 buffer was activated once there was a non-residential development adjacent to a residential development. It now reads that it is activated once there's a non-residential development adjacent to any development of lower intensity. And so that was adopted as well on Monday night and is now in effect.
Thank you, Philip. Is there any questions concerning those items from the commission? Okay. Hearing none, our next item is appearances. And what this is about is for anyone in the audience tonight that may have a item that would like to be presented to the Planning and Zoning Commission that's not on our agenda. If you are so inclined that you want to address our commission, please feel free to come to the podium, give us your name and your address. Seeing none, we're going to move right into new business. Under that, our first item is a consideration for an application. This was submitted by KRP Investments LLC, and they're requesting to rezone the property listed as 1121 North Green Street. The property currently zoned Low Intensity District, LID, and their application is a request to rezone to Medium Intensity District with a restricted residential overlay. Do you want to cover that, Jesse?
I will. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So these 2 parcels that we are identifying here and reviewing are somewhat in between Mole Lane and Independence Boulevard here on the screen, a little catty corner from St. Mary's Church Road. They're 2 vacant lots, and there's a parcel between them and North Green Street. If you look at the zoning map, these 2 parcels, as Mr. Chairman alluded to, are both LID, which is Light Intensity District. That is our main residential district. And the rezoning would be for that to be rezoned to MID, which is Medium Intensity District. It's a slightly higher density district. It also allows for some smaller commercial type land uses. However, the restricted residential overlay restricts those 2 parcels to just residential in nature. One thing we always look at when doing a rezoning is the 2030 future land use plan. The future land use plan does call those 2 parcels for residential low density. If you look at the map, they are right next to general commercial retail, which is in the red. That light yellow is the residential low density. The zoning comparison between the three, kind of spoke on that before, but the light intensity district is mainly for single-family residential development. That does allow for apartment complexes as is at a slightly lower density. The city's three main development districts, other than CBD and EID and SID, are LID, MID, and HID. If you see the screen above, it lists the dwelling units per acre for all of these districts. LID for the base zoning allows for 2 dwelling units per acre, as well as MID allows for 2 dwelling units per acre. And again, both districts do allow for single-family and multifamily unit development. Now, what we do have in the city that all parcels can use is performance residential density bonuses. So LID actually allows for 6 dwelling units per acre, and MID allows for 10 dwelling units per acre. And the reason I bring these up is the restricted residential overlay restricts this property to residential dwellings. So the residential dwellings per acre are important. On a site like this at 6.5 acres, LID would be, it could be 13 units base or possibly 39 units maxing out with performance points. We've had many of those on our agenda, so this is just a refresher. But MID, also the 2 dwelling units per acre, gives it 13 units on just those two proposed rezoned acres, which would push it up to 65 total max out units per acre if it was using performance density bonus points. The public services on these sites, there's not necessarily access from North Green Street unless you are using one of the parcels in front of it. So either way, if there was development to occur, those parcels would need to be recombined. There is water and sewer available to the sites. There is future plans for capacity improvements for the sewer. Currently, there's an 8-inch sewer line parallel to North Green Street, so the sewer improvements would be needed in order for a development to occur. Some impacts to the surrounding properties that are important to keep in mind, just like any rezoning. Any higher density, any rezone to a higher intensity district could result in higher density housing. There would be needed infrastructure in order to accommodate. Naturally, there could be more noise for that intensity of land use and possibility of increased traffic. However, the obvious route for traffic would be North Green Street, which is a major arterial, so that would not be a major impact on that site. Moving to the staff recommendation, since we go from 2 dwelling units per acre in LID to 2 in MID with a slightly elevated density for MID, which would be 10 dwelling units per acre as opposed to 6 dwelling units per acre, because of the very high need and demand for housing in the city, we believe that the MID district with an RRO serves as a good transition and buffer between HID and LID, which if you look at the first zoning map I showed, you've got HID to the, I guess that would be the south, or actually the east, and LID to the west and HID to the north. So MID could serve as a nice transitional buffer between the two. So the city does recommend an approval of MID and RRO, no higher density than that, We don't believe that anything higher than MID would be appropriate. But with that RRO overlay over top, it does restrict it to just residential. Part of that recommendation would also be to amend the 2030 land use plan to be consistent with this rezoning, which would take it from residential low to residential medium. So if you guys have any questions, just let me know.
Any questions for Jesse? I'm going to pose one, and that's to make sure I'm clear. Under MID, you've got a maximum of how many without considering performance points?
Without considering performance points, just the base is 2 dwelling units per acre.
And is that kind of what you're inclined to recommend, is that we negate performance points
No, that's not.
to control the density?
No, the performance points are not controlled at this level. That's controlled at administrative approvals. What we do at staff level is we have the ability, because it's embedded in the ordinance, to allow for higher density if they meet certain criteria within the ordinance. Some of those are building design standards, landscaping, infrastructure, and open space. So in order to gain density, generally you've got to leave either more open space or create a building that has, say, brick siding with articulating features. So it's not just it's kind of a give and take. To get density, you get a product that the city council has already approved by the city's zoning ordinance in order to give a different product than would be just outright given. So this rezoning would take it from 2 to 2 base, but it would up the performance density slightly from
6 to 10.
6 to 10 dwelling units per acre. And again, the LID and MID both allow for multifamily development as is.
Okay, so the overlay controls the fact that it's to be only residential.
Correct, yep.
But my thoughts are, I'm having a senior moment here. The limiting factor in what's being looked at as far as land use is going to be controlled a lot by the infrastructure that's in place.
Yes, very much so. The reason a lot of that property there and probably on Bost is the limited sewer capacity. Philip may be able to talk more about the plans for that, but it would need higher sewer capacity to have any type of density.
So for a developer, he could look to develop under what exists now with the potential to increase his development as that infrastructure is improved?
Right, yeah, as is now, multifamily housing could go there. The deciding factor on why it's not already possibly being developed is the sewer capacity.
Okay, thank you, Jesse. Anyone else have questions? Aaron?
Can you remind me, what's the acreage for this particular parcel?
It's approximately 6.5 for this site. They would have to utilize some of the property on the front. I'm not sure if they own that or not, in order to access the
Yep.
front. So
Right away.
that acreage could go up slightly, but these two parcels comprise approximately 6.5 acres.
Okay, so if they maxed out on their performance points, it could be up to 60 units.
Yeah.
That
yeah,
absolute most.
Right,
Yeah,
and
okay.
that would be fairly tough for that spot. That's
Yeah.
complete maxed out, but
Okay.
that's what you come up with just the math.
Okay, great. My question.
Thank you. Eric, any concerns, questions?
Do not.
Did I hear the word completely no commercial, correct? That's negated?
Yes, with that RRO, that negates any commercial development there. It would limit it to the same uses that are on the site now. It just would slightly elevate the density.
Bill, you have any comment? This time, we're going to open up this portion of our agenda for public comment. And the way this works is I will receive comments either for the rezoning request, or anybody has a negative or doesn't want to see that this zoning request is approved. If you want to address it, again, we ask that you provide your name, your address, come forward to our podium and tell us what your thoughts are.
My name is Jason Whiston. I live at 110 Meadowview Street here in Morganton. A lot of us here are in the property right behind this proposed development. And you covered a lot of the stuff I got into, because a lot of the fear that we had and concerns we have is not the unknown, because there was no real plans. Here's what we're doing or whatever. And I looked up KRP. They're a great company. They currently have several projects going on, one of which is in Winston-Salem. On 11 acres, they're putting in 96 units with a density of 8.65 units per acre. So given that, with this acreage, I was thinking about 75 or 80, so I was fairly close. But the problem is, our neighborhood, and all of us bought this property, or various properties, for the quietness, the fact that this was zoned low intensity. We never thought there'd be anything like this going on. There's a good wood buffer behind us. But 3 levels, the property they have going on in Winston is on 3 levels, which is what they would have to do. And that's going to put that 3rd floor, within just a few feet of our back windows. And I just feel that, and a lot of us here, the noise pollution, the light pollution that's going to be constantly on is going to be just right on us all the time. And I just don't think that the benefits of having extra apartments when there's other land available, the negative impact it would have on us as a community, and also the traffic. I'm really concerned about the traffic. I was looking up, we're be widening 181 fairly soon. That's supposed to start fiscal year 2022. The mass of construction of going on this and going on with 181, I think would be a very negative impact. And all of us drive 181 every day, and it's very congested there. And I really think that adding 65 new homes in one allocated spot right there would have a very drastic impact on traffic. So, but that's really all I got to say. Any questions for me?
Anyone have a question for? Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Sir, anyone else in our audience that would like to come forward and address this?
Well, my name is David Wells, and I live at 203 Meadowview Street, which is very close to where Jason lives. And some of the concerns I have already been mentioned, and he also mentioned those concerns as well. So I just want to reemphasize that our neighborhood, everyone who is there has those same concerns about it's going to totally change the character of our neighborhood. And, I've been there 26 years. Many of my other neighbors have been there for many years. And, we take care of our neighborhood. We look after each other. We pay our taxes. We keep it clean. We keep it safe. And there's just no reason why this rezoning needs to be allowed. It just needs to keep the zoning that it has. There's no reason why it needs to increase. As he said, there's plenty of other properties around the area. If they want to build in a medium intensity, there are plenty of other properties they can do that. There's no need to do this. And once this is done, it's done forever. You can't take it back. And, Morganton has a great reputation for good neighborhoods and green space. And if we're not careful, we're going to wind up having a situation like they have in Charlotte, Gastonia, other places. Properties get rezoned, big developments come in, apartments come in, and people don't want to be there. So we don't want that we don't want that to happen in our community. And so, anyway, I just hope that you will not allow this rezoning request to move forward. Thank you.
Okay, could you bear with us a minute? Jesse, can you bring up a plat that would show the relationship of where Meadowview is in relationship to the,
Don't have a plat available. I do have a location map on the screen. It's probably hard to see out here, but if you look on your screen, Meadowview would be, there's probably, it appears that those houses are adjacent to these two properties. Looks like Mole Lane comes in, and you know more than I, but Mole Lane comes in, and then you would take a left onto Meadowview. Is that correct?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
All right. And then the
My
next,
property directly is adjacent to
these two.
property that would,
Okay.
is
So
in question.
So it appears the two properties do abut all properties on Meadowview and, or Hillcrest Street, appears. So they are adjacent to the properties. Looks like there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 properties there on the left on Meadowview Street.
Right here on that, there's 6 houses that butt to the property.
Yeah, you can see it a little bit better on the actual zoning overlay.
There's 6 houses that butt to the,
Yeah, if you look at the future
Okay.
land use map here, it shows the parcels and the two highlighted in yellow. Meadowview Street comes down, and 6 or 7, well, there's 6 abutting those two parcels.
on the screen now.
okay?
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, sir. Oops, I'm sorry.
Hello, I'm Daphne Stevens, and I live at 109 Meadowview Street. Me and my husband have lived there since 1981. He and his father, Bob Stevens and Frankie Stevens, built our home. We are concerned about the depreciation of our home, backing up to apartment buildings, if that's what it's going to be. We also, there is a concern from a person that is a cemetery guru, Susan Houck, and she has some concerns about the two cemeteries located very near these two properties. There is the Advent Christian Church Cemetery, which is down below us. It is right on the border of what I see of where that property line is going to be. And Susan said that her relatives are actually in that graveyard. It's very old, and she said that there really should be a survey archaeologist that would need to come out and survey that land and use some type of ground penetrating radar to make sure no graves are disturbed. She said that because the graveyard was so old, that graves could be outside of the little graveyard that is there. So she said there was over 100 descendants in the community that have ancestors there. She said that there are evidence of graves not marked. And if you know Susan, she knows everything about a cemetery and who's in it and where they are, and she is just very knowledgeable. But she did say that there's evidence of graves not marked, indentations of ground, disturbed earth that has been noted outside of this graveyard by her. There's also a concern, she said, for the Quaker Meadows Historic Foundation Cemetery, which is above. If, I'm sure everybody knows where that is because it's I think there's 10 patriots of the American Revolution that are buried there. We don't know where this property would, join or butt up or, lie in perspective with these two graveyards. But she did say that there is evidence of graves that have been found on the outside of the fence at the Quaker Meadows Historic Graveyard. And she said there would be concerns of vandalism and that they would want to know how close this property project would be coming to that graveyard as well. So those are two things. And the other thing I was wanting to know, if this does take place, what kind of buffer zone, barrier, or privacy fence, landscaping would be constructed. Because our home is exactly behind where this is going to take place. Very, very close. It will depreciate our property terribly, so, thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Good evening. My name is Davis Ray with Winfield Properties in Jamestown, North Carolina, and I'm here on behalf of KRP Investments. Winfield Properties would be the general contractor and property management agent for this project. We are not the developer, but we are assisting in the design of the project. Winfield Properties is a 50-year-old company specializing in the development of multifamily properties across the state of North Carolina. We currently manage about 90 properties across the state, 5,000 units, and we have 17 projects under construction throughout the state. We've been honestly working on this deal, Mr. Lookadoo could tell you, for a number of years, but there have been barriers such as sewer that have just not worked in our favor. Our current design does fall under the 10 units an acre. We're actually utilizing the front parcel, and you'll have to forgive me, I don't have the exact parcel number in front of me, but the one on Green Street. We would utilize that particular parcel to access the site, and my calculations show it currently at between 8 and 9 units an acre. Addressing a couple of the comments, as a developer of multifamily communities, living in a single-family home, I understand it. The best thing we do, or we try to do rather, when we come into a community is we never want to be a square peg in a round hole. So we want to be in harmony with the neighborhood. A multifamily community serves as a natural transition from commercial to residential. Part of the reason this site was selected, and other reasons are obvious reasons, such as access to life amenities, your grocery stores, your pharmacies, shopping facilities, city services, and things of that nature. No project would go forward in this municipality or any other municipality without state, local, and DOT approval. So the access, the traffic, the buffering, all of that stuff would be approved or denied by state, local, and DOT officials. We would obviously have to go through traffic studies, curb cuts, and things of that nature before any access to this property were granted. As far as listening to a couple of the other comments, light pollution, traffic, 3-story buildings, those things would be addressed at a TRC or a permitting level. With respect to the cemeteries that were brought up, I'm not an expert in cemeteries or anything located off of our site. We would obviously have the site surveyed by certified engineers before anything was to take place on the site. And noting those things, I will definitely bring it up in the design process as we move forward, because that is not something that we would have any intent to do either. The buffering this site has a lot of mature vegetation. So what we try to do in being a good neighbor is to leave as much of that natural vegetation as possible, as well as adding landscape buffers around the property. We've seen in the past that fences become more of a nuisance than they're worth sometimes because, storms happen, they do fall down. You have to deal with the things of that nature. And we found that doing a dense landscape buffer seemed to help more than anything. Like I mentioned, we've got 90 properties throughout the state of North Carolina. We are a property management service. This site would have on-site property management and maintenance. And like I said, all we're wanting to do is to be a good neighbor, and I'm welcome to answer any questions you may have.
Any questions of other members of the commission?
You're talking multifamily here. What would be the height on these structures? Were you talking 2 floors, 3 floors?
We currently have it designed as a 3-story building.
That was one of the comments I heard.
It was, yep. We have a mix throughout our portfolio of 2- and 3-story buildings. So, if that was, we taking that back, it may be that the buildings closest to the neighborhood could be adjusted, or the site could be adjusted to pull the buildings away from those particular structures. But I think currently we have it designed that's it's some distance away. We never want to push right up on a property line unless the site's just that tight.
Would there be any single family in here?
What's the current anticipated density that you're looking at
Roughly 8.9,
per acre?
yes. That includes the front parcel on Green Street.
Got it. Thank you.
Other questions? Under LID type zoning, I take it that pro forma doesn't float under that zoning, which,
I mean, we've designed it to go a few above 6 units an acre, but we're not, coming in here asking for 20 units an acre either. We're trying to be realistic. It would be a very big ask for us to come in here and want to throw 150, 200 units. That's not what we deem as harmonious.
and maybe I'm digging too deep, but price range of your rental units?
Pending a market study right now, I say we go from approximately 500 to 1,200 per unit. And we're proposing 1s, 2s, and 3s.
Okay. Other questions?
I had a question, Jesse. With the new regulation about the buffer yards that got approved, how would that apply to this property? And
No, this type of property would have been protected anyway with a buffer.
Okay.
I believe it's a 15-foot, if I'm not mistaken, and there's large trees, small trees, large shrubs, medium shrubs, and small shrubs that are mixed in those buffers.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the requirement. The developer may, we set that and we make it an emphasis that that's the minimum.
Mm-hmm.
We always want people to go over the minimum. Some do and some don't. So, but that's our minimum requirement.
Yeah, thank you.
We also, it's fair to note that one of the areas and ways to get density, remember, it's not by right. You've got to give certain standards to have the bonus points. One of the criteria is actually open space.
Mm-hmm.
Another criteria is the retention of all 8-inch or above trees. So if they were to give a good portion of mature trees on the buffering lines, they could gain a density point there, so.
Mm-hmm. Great, thank you.
Thank you, David.
Thank you.
Anyone else?
He needs to.
You need to come back up here to the podium and ask your question, sir. And you need to address it to the commission.
Could this development also include other structures such as a clubhouse, a swimming pool, parking lot, other than the building itself or their apartment building itself.
Yeah, anything that's residential in nature to a multifamily building, so a clubhouse that's not used for commercial use, so like retail wouldn't be able to happen there, but anything used by the residents could be a part of that, playground, parking lot, those type things.
Okay, tennis court or,
Yeah, recreation
That sort of
space,
thing.
yeah, open space, recreation space, yeah.
okay.
Anyone else? Seeing no one step forward, we're going to close the public portion of this agenda item and bring it back to the commission for discussion or a motion.
Mr. Chairman, I would have just two questions directed toward the gentleman of the design firm. Number one, does this property, as far as buffer, lend itself to berming that would be able to increase a buffer height for, say, along with landscaping that might ease some of the concern about third story?
There's no final plan at this time, but we would take the advice and the guidance from the city staff to increase or include as much buffering as possible, knowing that there is a single-family residential neighborhood adjacent to this property. So the idea of adding berming is not out of question, no. We would look at every possible way to, I think if you do that adjacent to this particular neighborhood, you're going to put the natural mature vegetation in jeopardy. And sometimes that mature vegetation is denser than coming in, clear cutting and building this mound.
Thank you.
I have one other question that
Yes,
was
sir.
brought up about amenities for tenants. Is that something that you factor into your designs and building process?
The amenities for tenants?
Yeah, such
Yes,
as an activity
Yeah,
center.
on site, we have, on all of our sites, we have a clubhouse. The clubhouse includes a manager's office, a maintenance room, a computer center for residents, a community room for residents. We don't do pools. We don't do tennis courts. We have some open space. We do a playground that is a rubberized floor system playground. And then we have a paid laundry center in our clubhouse, but the tenants also have access to washer and dryer hookups in every unit.
Okay. Thank you.
I had a second question, back to Jesse, please, and just for reiteration on density. What's allowable on density between the existing LID and the MID, please?
Yeah, so the base, remember the difference between base and performance. The base is the same, not accounting for, I don't look at any other parcel that might be included that's already zoned the way they would like it. I'm just looking at the two parcels, which is approximately 6.5 acres. If you were to do performance points and you were able to max out on those performance points, you're looking at approximately 39 that are allowed right now by right on just those 2 acres, and you're looking at around 65 if you were to do performance points with MID. So the difference is the difference between those 39 and 65 if you were doing multifamily.
So he stated about 8.9 units per acre. So with the basically 4 acres, we're right close to the 39 under that situation.
8, 9, let's round to 9, and you've got, 6.5, that's 54, 55, around 56, 60 units, and then if you add another acre, if they have another acre on the street to gain access, you get that, those allocated lots, so, 65 could be at play. I don't know what the I haven't seen proposed plans, so I don't know what the,
Well,
Opposed.
I'm confused here. We've got, the zoning request addressed 4.47 acres, and then it addresses 1.96 acres, and how do you get up to 65 based on that? But to do that, you gotta be at a MID, is that correct?
right, right. The MID, if you max out on performance points, is 10 dwelling units per acre. So if you were to take 10 dwelling units per acre, and it's, the total acreage of those lots approximately is 6.5, that's 65 units maxed out.
Okay.
And then if you do the same math with 6 dwelling units per acre, it's right around 39. So, again, multifamily is still allowed, so it'd be, if it wasn't approved, it would be a lower density development if that were to occur.
Okay. I reckon what I'm trying to drive at is under current zoning, what are the maximum units available?
I'd just like to clarify again, what I thought I was hearing the gentleman say was the number of units based on the properties, but also the access from Green Street. Was that correct or not, inclusive of that?
I think there's 2 accesses.
Yeah, depending on what lot that is, there could be more acreage brought into this. I'm strictly talking about the 2 lots that are in the rezoning, because I don't have a proposed development. What we look at in rezonings is just possible land uses, and in this case, obviously, when you've got an RRO, which is just residential land use, you're just looking at residential units per acre. And on the screen here, it shows the base residential density and performance residential density. There might be a little confusion. Both of those are allowed by right. Performance if you build to the standards that have been approved by City Council. So there would not be another step for approval at this body with a rezoning approval, because both of those can be used. It just depends on the product that's built.
Okay. Thank you, Jesse. Again, commission members, we're back to either discussion or a motion.
Well, I will say from a zoning perspective, and that's what we're here for, is rezoning. This is a natural transition from commercial HID to LID, rezoning it to MID with residential overlay. I'm prepared to make a motion unless anybody else has any other
Well,
comments.
the motion would have to address the fact that it's currently LID going up to
Correct.
MID, okay,
With RRA.
with the overlay.
To be clear too, the motion for or the motion against, the motion for would need to approve an amendment to the 2030 plan to make that consistent. A motion against would be, the same, to keep in line with the 2030 plan.
So you're,
Yeah, I'll make a motion to approve the rezoning of this parcel from LID to MID with the residential overlay, and that the 2030 land use plan is amended to residential medium density to reflect this use.
okay, I have a motion. Is there a second to that?
I would second.
Okay, we got a second with Aaron. Discussion. My feelings are is that the lack of housing in this area, in this current market, it's critical. And I'm almost inclined to let the city council decide whether or not they're willing to push forward with such a decision. So I'm going to vote in favor of the motion to rezone. How about the rest of you? I'll call for the question. All in favor, aye.
Aye.
All those that are not in favor? Okay, we've got a vote of 4-2. That goes to City Council Monday in April on the 4th at 6 p.m. Okay. Moving on. Our next item under our new business is a consideration for an application submitted by Peachland Rental Associates to rezone the property listed as 510 South College Street, also 450 South College Street, West McDowell Street. I don't see a number for that. Property is currently zoned medium intensity district, and the application is to rezone to a high intensity district. Jesse, you want to discuss that?
Yes, sir, thank you. So, like you said, currently this property, these 4 properties are listed as medium intensity district. This rezoning would move those to a higher intensity district. On the screen, you see the current zoning and its proximity to the central business district, which is our most dense district as far as housing goes. It allows a lot of the same land uses for commercial development as HID and also as MID as well. Here's a proximity map. Again, it's just kind of emphasizing where it is in town on South College Street and McDowell, right across from the Performing Arts Center. Of note of importance, the 2030 land use map shows that big area in green on the screen as institutional and or governmental in land use, which would be anything from schools to any type of institutional or governmental type of development. That was the site of Morganton High School, I believe, the middle property and the corner property as well, probably some of the land around it. And again, comma is across the street from South College, which would naturally in 2007, 2008, when you were thinking of the comp plan, with the amount of governmental properties within that area, it was natural to have the 2030 land use map show institutional and governmental. The comparison from MID to HID, HID is a higher intensity. It allows for a wider variety of civic, institutional, retail services. It also allows for light manufacturing, whereas MID is mainly for small office service and smaller retail uses. HID allows for higher density housing. MID allows for the medium density housing, as we talked about in the last case. The services are pretty standard here. They both have access to a minor arterial on College Street. A couple of them have access to McDowell Street. There is water and sewer available for density on these 4 sites. Since this is a minor, the impacts to surrounding properties, this is a minor arterial, College Street, so it does have the capacity for some traffic, although any higher density development would obviously need to account for some traffic increases, noise, and then those increased intensities of land uses, one being light manufacturing is allowed in HID. As far as staff recommendations go for these 4 sites to be rezoned from MID to HID, because of the shift in demand and community vision and downtown master plan and the need for density within the inner part of the city, and to give a commercial mixed use, we're emphasizing mixed use so you can live and work in the same area to actually decrease traffic. The staff does recommend approval of this for a higher intensity district because of those changes in vision since the 2008. As I spoke about earlier, the 2030 map calls for institutional and governmental. We believe that was mainly because of the uses that were there during that study. Obviously, we know the school is gone now. The other property that encompassed the school has been sold, and the Performing Arts Center is in the CBD, so that's kind of a different land use anyway. So a rezoning approval would need to amend that 2030 land use plan as well to reflect that change. Any questions?
Any questions?
What is the number for the, what's allowed for residential in the high-intensity district?
Got that on the screen. It's 20 dwelling units per acre. So it is that is the performance point max, where MID is 10 dwelling units per acre. An important piece of that is the proximity to CBD. If you're speaking of land uses for residential, there's not a maximum. We go by the building height. That was changed, I believe, last year to allow for, it's harder and harder for people to build now for pro formas. So we got rid of the dwelling units per acre in downtown to allow for more density, but still keep the height maintained. So HID would be that next level down, but still, fairly high density.
Did that answer your question?
It did, thank you.
Anyone else?
Can we bring up that overhead that's shot of the properties?
Sure. Do you want the 2030 or the zoning map or just the location map?
That one right there, yeah. And I don't know if you can zoom that or not, or.
Can't zoom, it's a part of that PDF, but.
I guess my question, I'm trying to just kind of get a understanding of where existing properties lay to the back of that property, if you will, I guess it's the
There is,
side. That's the Jones area, Jones Street area.
there is some
Street.
lower intensity development there on Bay Street and on the back end of Heron Street, some smaller properties. But those are currently medium MID, so that, as we talked about before, you've got kind of a layering of intensities throughout the city, so naturally, CBD and HID would be your higher density, then it would move to MID, and then behind that on Jones Street would still keep that LID, that low intensity, so you've got a layering of districts there if it was to be rezoned.
The LID area there, the Jones Street, South Anderson, is it showing there? Are you familiar with the Jonesboro Historic District boundary there?
Yeah, the
Yes.
Jonesboro is Jones Street on the far end there, and then it kind of goes up to South Anderson. It's a fairly small district, and it goes up to Concord Street.
Right.
Of note that we are putting a district sign up there in June for Jonesboro to give it a little better clear boundary so people know.
So we're probably looking at more of what's generally on that property now, next to the old junior high school, which is
Well, it's vacant.
Alpine.
Yeah, it's vacant now, so it would lend itself to be, more either multifamily housing or multi-use commercial. MID is, it makes the density lower, so it's harder for, currently at the corner there, you've got the old, I think that's a school building there on the corner.
It was just sold, so.
Right, so to make the density work, it's come to our attention that more density needs to be allowed under the district. So, you've got a couple things to think about, all the land uses that could be allowed with that increase. So you've got, a difference of small office, small retail, and, you can still do mixed use to allowing for a higher density housing, possibly light manufacturing, we've got no calls to do that there, but those uses still are important to factor in when you do a rezoning.
Is the College Street renovation, is that still on the books somewhere in the future?
The widening or the pedestrian, yeah, I believe so.
We are complete with 25% designs. The next phase is to convert to 100% designs. And then we would have construction money. It's not available until 2024.
So we have the apartments in there that were built for the deaf community.
Right,
outlined.
right.
And to the left of that is the
Definitely be nice.
old junior high school that has been sold.
Correct.
So what we're looking at to be developed would be the rear and looking at it, if you're back to comma, to the right, those two parcels, which is where the high school was.
Yeah, everything in yellow on the screen right now, so everything across from comma where the high school was and where what is now the multifamily housing, and then that vacant building to the right. And then there's one small lot behind it. I think the goal for this rezoning was, instead of rezoning one or two smaller pieces, to have an actual district. So you can have that mix of land uses there. But it would be most of that block, not the single-family housing on Bay Street would stay the MID. It's just everything in that yellow hatched area on the screen.
But there's no way that you were talking about light industrial, to wrap those two apartments that are presently there with some type of,
Well, not as the land use is currently, because there's a multifamily development there in the middle of it. So unless some kind of unforeseen construction happens, you're not going to get a massive manufacturing facility there. And generally, manufacturing doesn't locate in that proximity to downtown anymore anyway. They need
Right.
close proximity to highways. So generally speaking, it would likely be commercial or residential in that area.
As it exists now, the larger block of that land is controlled by the deaf and blind.
Alder Springs, correct, yep.
And then the corner property going next to, or across from Common and to the corner of McDowell Street is actually city-owned.
City property.
Right, correct.
Correct. And there's a private owner on the lot on the other corner.
So if we approve that move, then and theoretically, if we have more apartments, whoever the controlling group is, it gives them the opportunity for more density than
Absolutely.
what they have now.
Yep.
Okay.
20 compared to 10, or 2 compared to, so you've always got to look at the base and then the performance. So the base in HID is 6, but the max performance is 20 compared to 10 for MID and 2 for base.
Okay, any further questions? Comments? Hearing none, I'm going to open this to the public. For public comment, is there anyone in our audience who would like to speak for or against this rezoning request?
Hi, my name's Stan Hendricks. I live at 108 Lyman Court, which, if you know the street, adjoins West Concord. So I wasn't even knowledgeable about this rezoning request, but now that I've listened, College Street has become quite busy. Tag office, police station. I would ask you to consider, if you go high in intensity, how that will affect College Street. I think you may find that we've just lost a stoplight at West Concord to a four-way stop sign. So I'm concerned about the traffic. I would want to really consider the effect that would have. We already have a crazy intersection down at Fleming and College, where they intersect. Little Caesars, pharmacy. That's already sometimes a nightmare to get through, especially at peak times. So, once again, just ask you to really consider the impact that's going to have on College Street.
Jesse, can you address the traffic counts for College Street?
I can address it.
Philip can address the
The
traffic counts.
Part of the project that we're completing or undertaking for College Street, which is a complete redesign of College Street from North Green Street to Fleming. Part of that is traffic analysis of every use and proposed use up and down that street, and they are aware of that this property at some point could potentially redevelop, and they looked at that prior to any rezoning occurring, because they have to look at it at, okay, what could it potentially, what potential effect could all those properties have, were they to develop or whatever that use may be. So that is part of that analysis that they are considering, and then what would happen is when we go to construction and we would construct that street such that it would handle that traffic, whatever traffic impact that may be. And if it gets to something beyond that consideration, then we would look at that when we issue the permit. If something ever comes about to develop, we would look at that when that development is permitted, as what impact that would have on it.
In the last few years, College has become quite a thoroughfare.
Absolutely.
Yeah, used quite often in all hours of the day. So, I just wanted to address that.
All right, thank you, sir. Is there anyone else? Okay, we're going to close it to the public, bring it back to our commission. Comments, questions, or a motion?
I'd like to move that we adopt the staff recommendation to move to HID.
Okay, you got two things you got to do. You got to amend the Mission 2030
Right.
plan, and then the motion to approve the zoning request from MID to HID. Is there a second to that?
I'll second that.
We got Eric to second that. Any further discussion? Comments, questions? I'll call for the vote. All in favor, aye?
Aye.
Any opposition? Okay, that carries and goes to the city council again on Monday, April the 4th at 6 o'clock. All right, moving on to our final item of business tonight, which is a review of a major subdivision classified as West Union Terrace, located at 313 West Union Street, 101 Lyman Court, 103 Lyman Court, and 104 Lyman Court. Philip, you want to take that on?
Yes, sir. So, members of the commission, Chairman, this is as the chairman stated, a request for a major subdivision, and you'll see it up on your screen. It is for a proposal of 7 lots, and if you all recall, you may be familiar with this parcel, as it was the subject of a rezoning in the past year. It also is was the genesis for the restricted residential overlay, which you see that it is zoned MID with the restricted residential overlay. And so what we have been working with the developer and their engineer in their designs for this street, it's a little bit different than, say, the Mulholland subdivision where new streets were being built. This is one where an existing street was there, albeit it's a 15-foot wide street. It's being widened, and so that would so it's being widened, which kicks it into that major subdivision category, because they're dedicating new right-of-way. So in going through that, we looked at a number of considerations that are required by us in our subdivision review process. The process for approval is that the preliminary plat, which has been submitted to you all, goes before Planning and Zoning Commission for recommendation to City Council. It is then sent to City Council with whatever recommendation, and they approve that or deny that subdivision or approve with contingencies. So in this review, I'll go through and look at the sections. In general, it meets all of our stated requirements. The And we look at things such as utilities, we look at the pavement width, the pavement depth, the curb and gutter, and all of that. We look at street alignments and whatnot. One of the street alignment that we looked at, and as a staff recommended, was that the center line of the street be adjusted so that it is in alignment with the remainder of Lyman Court. What that causes is a shift of about 4 feet. And it causes that road to be, as you're driving down that road, to be more in alignment with the existing street that is there. The lots, when I say the lots, they meet or exceed the minimum standards with our zoning ordinance, and I'll get into that in a little bit more depth. You heard a lot of talk tonight about base residential density and performance residential density. This is a subdivision that is utilizing the performance residential density. As being zoned MID, it is afforded 2 units per acre. The parent property is 1.29 acres, and that creates a proposed density of 5.43 units per acre. So they need somewhere between 12 and 15 points to add the density, the performance points to add the density that they need. So going through that, we looked at the performance points that they are proposing, which are infill development of less than 2 acres, fulfills a greenway on the adopted plan. They're installing sidewalks on one side of the street, decorative street lighting, a buffer yard, and if we could put up that second, if you see on this map on the bottom side, you see that density that is adjacent to the adjacent residential, or density, the buffer that is adjacent to the existing residential. We are looking at building design enhancements, and that's per table 4.6. That's the total of 7 points, and they would be incorporating a covered front porch. It states that each home will have a 5-foot deep front porch from the front porch of the garage to the other side of the home. From the front of the garage, I'm adding words to it. On number 2, they're looking at front windows enhanced with side shutters and seal. Number 3, a roof that would have a 6 to 12 pitch and dimensional asphalt shingles, and it would be the same color on all the homes. Wall materials in the front would be 30% stacked stone from ground up in various applications, 70% stucco over hardboard, all homes to have the same color coordinated materials. There will be a facade articulation or a bump out on the garage and porch, a foundation stacked stone, and then the garage states that 2 car all homes, and then 7 points for design features in this section. So they would achieve the necessary points to accomplish this density. Continuing on with other requirements, if you recall, there is a regulation in our ordinance that open space be dedicated in a formula of the number of dwelling units times the average size of the family times 0.008. They are asking to be allowed to pay a fee in lieu, which is afforded to them by our ordinance, but it has to be approved by City Council. So that is before you as part of your recommendation. There is in your report, if we skip on ahead to where it talks about storm drainage improvements and stormwater, we had a note in here that it would be contingent upon approval from the North Carolina Department of Environmental Quality. We have since worked that out. I think that we're in compliance with those regulations. As I spoke with our engineer late this afternoon, they will have to have, as part of our stormwater ordinance, a required maintenance agreement, then that will be in compliance or submitted to and the responsibility of their homeowners association. one of the sidewalk improvement requirements, as it states, is that there has to be a minimum of a 4-foot distance from the back of the curb to the sidewalk. Staff is recommending a minimum of an 18-inch strip to be added. The most recent statement by the design professional states that they will incorporate a 24-inch between the back of the curb and the sidewalk. We are recommending that because if you look at that, the character of that area, if you look at South Anderson Street, there's an 18-foot strip between that sidewalk and the back of the curb. So to maintain that same harmony with the adjacent neighborhoods, we're recommending that they be allowed to incorporate that 18-inch minimum strip, or 24 as they have proposed. The traffic control signs and markings, what they have to apply for and obtain an encroachment permit from the NCDOT. And so in order to make sure that they meet all those requirements, those have to be incorporated, and so they will follow through with that. And I believe that are all, I believe that's all so they either meet or exceed any of our other standards other than the ones that I outlined for you that I felt like needed more explanation.
Could I ask a question about utilities? Are they overhead
Electric utilities, no, they will be underground.
in the ground? Okay.
Yes.
Anyone else have a comment or question?
Could you elaborate just a little bit on the green space paid in lieu fee? Could you just say a little bit more about that?
So there is a formula that in our ordinance, we require that you dedicate a certain number of, or a certain amount of space for green space. Or you can pay a fee in lieu. And if you pay the formula to determine the amount of open space is this formula that I stated, which is the number of dwelling units times the average size of the family. And for that, we go back to the most recent census and get the average family size, or household size rather. And then we multiply that times 0.008. And then that gives us the number of acres to be dedicated. And there is a formula that I don't have in this report that then gives us, we take the tax value and have a multiplier in there, and that gives us the amount that they are to pay for that fee in lieu.
Got it.
And it's sometimes, in a lot of cases in a subdivision that's small like this, where the open space may not be of any benefit to the neighborhood, then we do recommend that they are allowed to pay that fee in lieu.
Got it. Thank you.
Other comments or questions? Was given this, Philip, does that need to be exhibited as a possibility, although it's not part of our
Right.
requirement?
Right. That's not a part of our requirements. That is and
Nice to know.
These are the photographs that they submitted to illustrate how they would be in compliance with these design standards for their homes.
Copy that, okay.
Is there any requirements on square footage or anything of these homes?
Not unless they are required so by the restrictive covenants. There's nothing in the city ordinance that requires minimum house size. And I think the developers and their design professionals are here. They may want to speak to that and answer any questions that you have.
Well, we'll go ahead and open it up to the public.
Hi.
Could you please give us your name again and where you reside?
Well, William Andrews. I reside in Boca Raton, Florida, but I've had these 4 properties since 2004. But now seems to be the time that this kind of quality project would fit very well in that particular location. And I've enjoyed coming up with now what I think is really good-looking development, the landscaping, everything about it is a first class, as far as I'm concerned, a first class project. And we've met, we really didn't, I don't think we needed the performance standards to come up with the photograph that you see of the thing. That, we would have done that anyway because of where the location is and the kind of clientele you have that would want to live there and enjoy a first-class environment. As far as there was mention about the, what do you call it? The recreational portion. We also own on the east side of Lyman Court, and that development, what we preliminarily come up with, it's going to have more than 30% in a park-like setting for the homeowners to use. And it'll be an HOA where, let's say it's got a picnic shelter and you want to invite the family over and everything. So like any HOA, you reserve your weekend or what have you to go out there and play. So it'll have a lot of amenities, and 30% is a lot of green space. So.
Questions, comments?
Hey, you could address the square footage roughly?
1,900 square feet,
19.
1,900, okay.
3-bedroom, 2-bath.
What's the frontage on the lots, do you know?
50. It's 50.
They're 50 by about 124 feet deep.
Okay, good. I was just afraid of some tiny houses coming in.
No, they're not, they're not tiny.
Magnifying glasses on there.
In fact, we were told, we did some research beforehand, and most of the people thought 1,700 square feet would be right in the ballpark, and we thought that that was a little small.
Okay.
I like this much better than the other proposals for that property.
Clarification, are we talking, I'm looking at this overlay, I guess, the layout here, West Consultants.
Yes,
So we're talking about 5 properties and 2 West Union?
correct.
Okay. And these are representative of the 5 units or the 2?
Yes,
two
those
front
would be the
also?
5-unit representation, right.
And-
You would start at the back of the Lyman Court as you're going south. You would start with 5 of those facing Lyman Court, and then you would have 2 custom homes that have, obviously, you know, the value and the kind of homes that would want to be facing West Union Street. So they're more aesthetically and pleasing. All those are nice, but I mean, really putting in, we're thinking that those homes probably would end up, well, most homes along that street right now are in the $700,000 range. And so that's all I can say. But obviously, they have to comply with the point system, okay? So it's not like somebody can come in there and do a very contemporary home that doesn't fit the thing. That, your point system wouldn't probably work for that. So what we're doing is we're proposing homes that aesthetically match the existing homes, especially right across this Lyman Court on the corner there is a cottage home, a craftsman home. And so I think a very, very well-designed large craftsman home would probably be appropriate there on the other side of the street.
Any other comments, questions for Mr. Andrews?
The reason I asked that, I think over the course of the years, there's been a lot of concern about the front-facing properties. As to, as you say, character and aesthetics and fit to their neighborhood and that kind of thing, so.
Oh, and I'm aware of it too, and
Right.
obviously as a developer,
I'm just
you
getting
want
it out there, but.
you want to make sure that you're getting to the highest and best use of the properties, and we think we've found some beautiful elevations that fit right in. So, and by the way, I've done 4 other projects. Every project that I've done has won either a city, a county, or a state award.
Well, good. We hope that'll apply here.
Well, I'm hoping you create it so I can win it.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else in the audience would like to speak for or against this? All right, hearing none, I'm going to close the public portion of this item and bring it back to the commission. Is there any further discussion or comments? I know this has been almost third time's a charm, I think.
Yeah, I think it's time to move forward. I like what I see.
I believe we addressed earlier on street configurations as sort of a separate item of speed limit and that kind of thing, particularly as we go with Lyman Court is or having this development out to it. I think
We did that basically because it was multi-units back in there.
This is a different approach, and I think it works.
Yeah, I think so
And
too.
so if someone would like to make a motion, I will entertain that.
I'll make a motion, we approve his major subdivision application.
Okay, and this is a preliminary approval, is the way I understand it, right, Philip?
Conditional.
This will be this will be a recommendation. So from this point forward, you would make a recommendation to City Council. City Council would then vote on it at their April 4 meeting. That would then give Mr. Andrews the ability to begin construction. And then he would begin and complete construction. Once the construction is completed, they would then submit a final plat to us, and we would review, and we as staff would review that and approve that, and then he could begin selling lots once he recorded that final plat.
And when he says construction, that's just for the improvements for the roads and
Correct.
sidewalks, for the infrastructure.
Infrastructure.
The construction
Houses.
of the houses will be at permitting,
That's
the
correct.
permitting stage.
Okay, I've got a recommendation or a motion from Rick that talks about conditional approval for the preliminary plan in conjunction with the revisions listed in Philip's report. Do I have a second to that?
I'll second that.
Waits, is a second. Is there any further discussion? Call for the question. All in favor, aye?
Aye.
Any vote against that? Best of luck to you. That goes to City Council again Monday on 4 April at 6 p.m. Thank you, folks, for your patience. Final item tonight is if there's any further discussions that anybody would like to make or comment on. All right, hearing none, move that we're adjourned.